Do you have a 20-year-old BMW with loose steering? Maybe the steering wheel even shakes at highway speeds. This is my 2000 BMW 328i, and today I'll show you how to replace the front lower control arm bushings. The control arm bushings are common wear items on these cars, and I've had to replace them many times since I bought this car. Now that I think about it, they're actually one of the reasons I started learning how to work on this car, and cars in general. They need to be replaced in pairs, and you should always use a matching set. Genuine BMW bushings are filled with fluid and might provide the best handling, but they tend to rupture prematurely, leaking all their fluid, which can quickly cause noticeable play in the steering that only gets worse with time. Many aftermarket bushings, like the ones I use now, are made of solid rubber for added durability without really sacrificing the feel of the original handling characteristics. You can also find polyurethane bushings that will stiffen up the handling quite a bit, but this introduces shaking and vibration that the average driver won't be happy with. My car is an early model rear-wheel drive sedan, but I'll do my best to explain any significant differences for all-wheel drive models and those from later production dates. Also, I'll be replacing the bushings and brackets together, so I won't be demonstrating how to press new bushings into the old brackets. Anyway, this is actually a pretty easy job if you have the right tools, but it can be a nightmare without them, so make sure you're prepared and let's get to it. Here are the tools that I used for this job. Impact wrench, torque wrench, really old plastic mallet, electric screwdriver, 17mm socket, 16mm socket, socket extension, Phillips number 3, a 4-inch 3-jaw puller, floor jack, and 2 jack stands. For this job I also needed a stool, a creeper, a light, degreaser, dish soap, shop towels, 2 wood blocks, padded gloves, waterproof grease, safety glasses, a paint marker, and a new set of control arm bushings. These bushings come in a couple different sizes depending on the year and style of your car, and bushings for all-wheel drive models have a different design, so make sure to buy the right ones from a reputable source. The bolts for these are also supposed to be replaced anytime you remove them, so it's nice that these bushings came with new bolts, but I actually needed 4 more of these bolts for the front end reinforcement brace. As always, there are links in the description for everything I used. To start, I parked the car on a couple wood blocks to make it easier to jack up. Your belly pan might look different, but this one at least can be removed with a Phillips number 3 screwdriver.
By the way, don't forget to mention you're wearing safety glasses, in case you didn't mention it later.
On my car, this tubular brace is the front end reinforcement, but you might find a metal plate here instead. Either type can be removed with a 16mm socket. It's important to note that you cannot drive the car with this reinforcement removed without risking major damage to the car. I removed the front wheels to take some weight off the control arms because it makes installing the new bushings easier, but it's not required. This wheel was a little stuck because of corrosion on the hub. You might need to whack it a few times with a plastic mallet if the wheel is really stuck. At this point, the control arm bushings can be unbolted. I twisted the bushing back and forth a few times to loosen it up, then used a 4-inch 3-jaw puller with an impact wrench to remove the bushing.
Make sure that point is right in the center, or else it's not going to work. There's a little hole right in the end for the puller.
I used to rent a 3-jaw puller from AutoZone every time I replaced these bushings, but rental tools are often well used, and without a sharp point on the tip of the puller won't stay in place on the end of the control arm. So I decided it was time to buy my own set of pullers, and I'm really glad I did. I've always used a regular socket wrench for this part, and it takes forever, but my new impact wrench made this really easy.
So easy.
There was some gunk on the arm I couldn't wipe off, so I tried Degreaser, but it didn't help as much as I thought it would. I probably could have scraped it off, but it wasn't really a big deal. The brackets are marked L for left and R for right, and the bore holes are bigger on one side to fit over the sleeves in the frame rail, so do a test fit and make sure you have the correct bushing facing the right way before moving forward. The service manual recommends applying soapy water to help the bushing slide on, but I just used straight soap because it was easier. It might take longer to dry, but I've always done it this way and never had a problem. Once they're lubed up, I can usually just push the bushings into place, but it just wasn't happening this time. A few taps with the plastic mallet did the trick. Just make sure not to smash your fingers. The service manual says to measure the distance from the bushing to the center of the ball joint with a 1mm tolerance, but I doubt that even BMW techs do that. Because the control arm is tapered, you can't easily push the bushing on too far, and if it's not in the right spot, then the bolts won't line up with the holes in the frame, but you can always compare it to the bushing that you haven't replaced yet for reference. Also, the control arm settles inside the rubber bushing once you put the car on the ground, and the car will need an alignment after installation anyway, which should correct any minor deviations. However, I'm not an engineer or a real mechanic, so do what you think is best. Rotate the bracket as needed to match the angle of the frame, and slide it onto the sleeves. I kinda had a hard time getting things lined up this time, but once I got the bolts started, the bracket fell right into place. These bolts should be torqued to 43 foot-pounds. The front-end reinforcement brace also requires new bolts every time they're removed. These are known as torque-to-yield bolts, and they should actually stretch a little when properly installed. First, I'll loosely install all 4 bolts. The 2 rear bolts are angled, so they won't line up unless the brace is against the car. Then I'll use a torque wrench to tighten the bolts to 43 foot-pounds. Now, the bolts need to be turned another 90 degrees with a tolerance of an additional 30 degrees, which can be measured with a special tool called a torque angle meter. I don't have one of those, so I'll use a paint marker to check my work by placing 2 dots 90 degrees apart like this. Stretching the bolts a small amount is supposed to provide a more consistent clamp load, but it also means that installing them more than once is likely to cause a failure.
Alright. I can see why it says 90 degrees plus 30 is a tolerance, because It's really hard to do exactly 90, and you have to go 90, but it's okay to go a little bit further. That one is pretty much spot on. I could go a little bit further. This one, I went a little bit further. It's hard to see that one. That one's pretty much spot on. I could have gone a little bit further. Maybe I will. That one's about perfect.
By the way, you can now support the channel by purchasing this awesome design, available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and in a bunch of different colors as well. Check for a link in the description below. Don't forget to reinstall the belly pan. It's important for fuel economy and protecting the alternator from water and debris, so if yours is damaged or missing, try to find a used one at a junkyard or on eBay like I did. Before reinstalling the wheels, I wiped off any loose corrosion and applied some waterproof grease, but you might need a wire brush if there's a lot of rust. With the car on the ground, torque the wheel lugs to 88.5 foot-pounds. But don't go anywhere, we're not done. The service manual warns that the car must be left undisturbed on the ground for at least 30 minutes while the soapy water evaporates, allowing the control arm to be correctly seated in the rubber, otherwise you could have problems with the handling. And don't forget, the car will need an alignment soon if you care about your front tires. I've made a bunch of videos with this car, from overhauling the cooling system to rebuilding the brakes, and there's more to come, so check those out before you go. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more of the best DIY videos on the internet. And until next time, just keep throwing money at it.
So to wrap it up, there's one vehicle you should never buy under any circumstance, no matter who's buying it, is a BMW. Run. Do not buy BMWs. They are all trash. Let me underline that again. All trash. Do not buy one.